I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay.
Hoorah!
All right. Welcome to the first episode of Fitness for Misfits.
Oh.
We're Kyla and Thomas, and we're going to start just with a little bit of intro about ourselves so that you know who we are and what we're about. So, my name is Kyla. I've been physically active my whole life. I played a lot of sports growing up, climbed a lot of trees, started strength training when I was pregnant with my second baby, and then
When was that?
1996.
There you go.
And did a lot of attempting to educate myself about exercise in pregnancy, exercise postpartum, and there's a little bit of information out there, but not a whole lot. So I did a lot of self-learning for many years, and then I went to school to become a midwife, worked as a midwife for several years, saw the general lack of understanding about exercise in healthcare providers in general, and the general lack of knowledge about core and pelvic floor function after having a baby. So I kind of started to do a little more education there for my own interest as well as helping my clients. And then I transitioned into doing strength training with this guy. And so I have done a lot of continuing education about core and pelvic floor function and exercise, and as those two things relate. But we do circus arts. I do a lot of aerial. Practicing aerial also tends to cause pelvic floor dysfunction, and so those things have kind of all merged together for me, and kind of how I ended up here, more or less. So.
Okay.
What would you like to share about
Well,
how you got here?
I'm Thomas, and also been active my whole life. I grew up with a lot of combat training, a lot of exercise, military brat, and and then was into more alternative sports like skateboarding and stuff like that as a youth, and then. As I got older, got really into just lifting and working out and bodybuilding, and after realizing I spent a lot of time in the gym anyways, decided to start working at one and start training other people. So I started getting educated, and the first course I took was a lot about correctional fitness, and hadn't even heard of the term, and at the time I was just following the greats of bodybuilders before that, and then when I started training people, I quickly realized that the average person was more than just untrained. They were not ready for hardly anything. You had to almost teach people how to walk and breathe and everything, and then due to the amount of injuries that I had seen and the people that I was seeing as clients, I started learning about different therapies to go along with training, or just how to deal with specific issues. So, and it started off very piecemeal, getting knee problems, started learning about knee injuries and, shoulder, etc. And then after realizing that nobody would see anybody that I would refer out to, like a massage therapist or a manual therapist that did good work, I went to school for massage therapy so I could do fascial work, and start filling that gap myself. And it's just been a long road. It's Pandora's box. Once you start going down that road, it's you start getting into Paul Check, and getting a lot of therapy related stuff, and you get into like Charles Poliquin, and you're getting into sports training stuff, and then there's so much divergence there, and then nobody fits any of those things. So it's been a long road, over like 2.5 decades now, just working with people, seeing what's in front of me, and trying to understand their body and how to help them just to feel better and be able to be functional human beings with less pain and, do things. And it's, the fitness world really, for the average person, isn't about being lean, being ripped, being yoked, having abs, none of that. Putting up tonnage, they don't care. They just want to not hurt when they get out of bed in the morning and be able to do stuff normal, and reach the stuff at the highest level of their cabinet and at the lowest level, with relative ease and not so much pain. And that's that was the starkest reality, I think, for me, is realizing that people couldn't do most of the cool stuff that I learned, and even all the protocols I've learned over the years and trained with different, high-level masters, your Polikins, your Czechs, so on and so forth like that. Nobody can do that stuff. It's very rare. I've had a few athletes over my career that's and even then, most of the time they've skipped basics and just need to go back and do basics. So now I'm here, right?
I mean, one of my big motivations, aside from just having babies and wanting to feel good in my body again, was hurting my back. I had chronic low back pain for a long time, and exercise was really the only thing that helped it. It never went away until I figured out how I needed to train my core. But woke up one morning and I couldn't stand up, and I crawled down the hallway crying to the bathroom, and I was like, all right, I gotta get serious about this.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that story from people, and mostly it's nothing. Nobody, had a sick accident or took some sweet trick off of a ramp or nothing. They just couldn't get up after they bent over for something or woke up broken. Mm-hmm. Most of the injuries that I see and work with, they don't even know how they got them. They're just I don't know, it just started being a problem one day, or I slept wrong and they never went away. And they don't realize it's accumulative, it's their whole life, bad patterns that get you in this problem. So, yeah. And we're both circus artists, as Kyla mentioned, and even a lot of athletes, they're talented in spite of a lot of physical challenges, a lot of pain, and they just kind of deal with injuries, or they have some dysfunction that they're still able to do pretty high level stuff with, but you'd be surprised at the low level things that then they can't do very well. I've seen some pretty talented people that they're broken except for the thing that they do, the sport. And it's fascinating. Bodies are fascinating that way.
Find ways to adapt and make the
bodies are master
that you need
adapters.
to do, and doesn't mean it feels good otherwise. No. I mean, it's pretty common, joke thread in general, just even in lifters or artists of some kind, or athletes, where pain, you just do stuff anyways. It's just the life is pain for them, so they just it doesn't have to be that way, but they don't know, Yes, I enjoy the current state of my life where I rarely feel like I need some ibuprofen.
Yeah.
As opposed to living off of it.
And we're not getting younger.
No. So now we have this studio. So you started at All Star.
I started a big box gym
here in West Seattle many years ago.
Well, I technically started at a 24-hour fitness downtown Seattle, but the general manager was such an idiot that it didn't work out, and one of the trainers that convinced me to start doing it told me about this new gym, All Star, and I went over there. And it was it's a box gym. I learned a lot there, but about what I don't want to do. And now I don't want things to be in the fitness industry for, the gym world is just not great. But Yeah. Then I went on my own in 2013 originally and started Equilibrium Fitness. And within a few months, my buddy Dominic had joined me from All Star also, a much older guy. And then we expanded for a bit. And then when he passed away shortly, the first 5 years, and then you and I started Optimal Health and kind of started over at that point as well. Just when it was like, I don't know, it worked out really well.
2019, we opened our tiny little personal training studio, and then a year later COVID happened, so that ended up being a really good choice.
Yeah, that really worked out. And luckily we both have medical licenses, so we were able to operate in a gray zone, and since everybody was private, it was easier. It still was slow for a bit, but it worked out.
Yeah. And then a year ago, we signed the lease on our new space, which is Misfit Strength Studio, hence the title of our podcast.
Right. And it's big.
A lot bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do we want to talk about what we're trying to do here at Misfit?
Yeah, sure. What do you think we're doing?
I think that we're trying to give access to training to more people because we were very limited in our tiny space before. And having much more space, we have more options to be able to have classes and have other things that are a little lower price point, but still have those things be really high quality.
Right.
And also, create a space where people feel comfortable and safe and supported and not expected to look a certain way, be a certain way, have some idea about fitness looks like this, because fitness looks like lots of things, and different people have different bodies, and that, you don't have to look like the person over there in order to be worthy of being in the gym.
No.
To care about getting stronger, there's lots of reasons to be fit, and so we want to just make that feel safer and more accessible to more people.
Yeah, and quality training more accessible to more people, or at least information around training. Yeah.
And we're big enough to have circus arts here, which is exciting.
That is exciting.
Get to incorporate that a bit.
Yeah.
A bit more.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty good summary. I mean, I think it's, kind of a big deal that we've decided to make our niche with the bigger space about being more inclusive and being the space for people who don't feel comfortable at a regular gym, where they can feel comfortable here, like, oh, this place is for me. I'm not a gym bro. I'm not someone who's posing in the mirror in the aerobics room or in front of the dumbbells or whatever, right? And not, yelling and screaming while I'm lifting or just any of that stuff, but also where you can get good information. And, it's been really important to me to set up in a way where we can provide access at lower price points for some level of coaching, or at least, oversight from a coach and being able to interact with one that gives you good information, to help you do stuff well, at the very bare minimum, that somebody's there to make sure your technique is good and your mechanics are going to be pretty good and you're not going to hurt yourself. And then on top of that, it's easy to waste time in the gym. So if you can not waste your time and do things that are going towards goals that you actually want and the adaptations that you want to drive, because there's so much information available to us now. Most of it's no good. And most people that you see on the internet are just influencers. It doesn't mean anything, And, the fitness industry has no barrier to entry in any of the states across our nation. So, generally speaking, a personal trainer in a club is just somebody who, works out a lot typically it was always like, oh, someone who body builds, but that doesn't mean they know how to create adaptation. It's just that they're obsessive, and oftentimes they cheat with gear. But typically it's more that they got good genetics, are already prone that way, and they spend a lot of time doing it, and more likely not even that efficiently. They probably spend twice as long as they need to accomplish the same thing because they don't know themselves, but they got the time and the energy and the desire to spend that much time in a gym.
And they look like them.
Right, and they don't know how to then relate it to a person in front of them, or why it would even matter. Mm-hmm. The average trainer in the fitness industry doesn't know the difference between different strength qualities, between are you training for the adaptation of relative strength versus functional hypertrophy versus endurance. They don't even know what you're talking about. If you mentioned that, or why you would choose 10 reps versus 6, right? And then even like, what does that even mean? Right? Or how many sets you would do, or what is a neuroengram to create a good pattern for somebody's movement. Like they don't know these things. They don't think in these ways, and if you go in to see them, they're not gonna know anything. I can't tell you how many trainers I've seen when I worked in a gym who would get somebody new, and it'd be somebody older. I mean, I guess probably around my age now. But they would have been, pretty overweight, not fit at all. Like they haven't done stuff in 40 years or whatever, or ever. And, they tell you that they've got, multiple bulging discs and this issue and that issue. And, they're making them do burpees and stupid things and they don't even know why. It's just work. And of course they get injured. I got a lot of people that moved over from whoever they were seeing to me just because they would listen and see what I was doing on the floor with different people and how I would talk to them and things we would talk about and how I could, address an issue and solve a problem. Look at their puzzle of, oh, what's going on? You're feeling this, what's going on with you, and trying to understand their bodies and just, get them to do exercise without pain.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like step one. Most people aren't ready to be like, oh, they should be doing a 5x5 or, cluster training or whatever cool thing is out there to try to get, some better adaptation for strength or power, right? They don't need that. They just need to move.
Right.
Without pain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sweating and getting your heart rate up is beneficial.
That's great. It's exercise.
But if you're going after a specific result, that's not necessarily going to get you there. A lot of people just want to feel like they did work and they're tired, and there's certainly value in that.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily going to get you to a specific goal.
It's not training. Training is driving a specific adaptation. Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of exercise, and that's where you get into the world of your aerobics classes. And people like that stuff, and they go to class, they like to follow, they don't want to think. They feel like, well, I worked hard and I sweated, but that doesn't equate to the physiological changes you want. And the reality is, 6 to 8 weeks when you're brand new at anything, you've got about 6 to 8 weeks. It's gonna work. You're gonna see results because you haven't been doing anything. But after that point, you need to know how to drive adaptations, or you're gonna have a big drop off of getting anywhere. And that's if you didn't injure yourself in that same time period and you continue to even exercise, which is pretty common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I'm doing everything and I'm not seeing results," but it's like you don't even realize that you're not doing the right thing to get the results that you want.
Right.
And it'd be great if it were as simple as move your body and you're going to get the results that you want, and you're going to improve your health and your fitness, and it's going to be good for your mental state. But if you have a specific appearance goal or strength goal or whatever, you have to know how to train for that.
Right.
Do we maybe want to talk a little bit just about exercise in a very general way? Like why exercise? What does it accomplish?
What do you mean?
I mean, well, I'm thinking from the perspective of, there's a lot of talk about diet culture in the fitness industry. That's a big problem, and because of that,
Huge.
We're very focused on, the reason that we exercise is to lose weight, and the purpose of exercise is to burn calories. And I would argue that burning calories is a side effect of exercise, but
right.
it's not what we're trying to accomplish. I never exercise because my goal is to burn calories. My goal is to create an adaptation at a cellular level that's going to drive the result that I want to get. And yeah, burning calories is a piece of that, but that's generally when I find, and I'm going to speak as a female-bodied person in this society who's put a lot of pressure on themselves to look a certain way. It was very much about what's the number on the scale, how many calories am I burning, and it's just not a healthy mindset to be in. And when we're stuck in that mindset, I mean, not only are we not necessarily doing the things that we need to get the results that we want, we're always going to be dissatisfied because no number on the scale is ever going to make you feel good about yourself. which is a whole nother topic in and of itself. But I really encourage people to get away from the idea that, I exercise to burn calories, because that's not really the purpose of exercise. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think, your exercise is for, health and feeling good and joint health as we age and strength and, being able to do things and live the life you want to live, with relative low limitations. right? If you want a specific adaptation for body fat, like a body composition change, it mostly revolves around food, when you get to that point. And it mostly unpleasant. The reality there too is that, some people are lucky and they can have a relatively higher body fat percentage and look pretty lean because of just the way fat is carried around on their body. This is where they store it. But for most people, it takes a pretty lean, a pretty low level of body fat to start seeing like abdominal muscles and stuff like that. And it's not pleasant, it's not comfortable, and you can ask anybody who's been on a stage for bodybuilding, they'll tell you, that day on stage, they look the best they ever do in their life, and they feel the worst. And that's a super common thing. It's pretty rare to be the other way. There are ways to do it better, but it's a lot longer. You can't compete as often because your body just can't deal with that. And it's easier. It's a lot of stress. That's the thing. It's a lot of stress on your body, and it's not exactly a healthy way to live. And it doesn't translate to, my aesthetics look great, so therefore my heart's in great condition and my cardiovascular system's in good condition. And
I feel good.
And my endocrine system's in a good condition. Yeah, and I feel good. And those aren't the same things. And a lot of people don't get that. They don't understand that. You see people on the internet, they're ripped all the time. Is that true? They're usually not. They're not really showing you the struggle. And mostly what you see is a lie. And, on purpose, right? It's marketing, it's sales. I mean, our whole culture is built around selling you something in some fashion. That's a basic underlying crux of capitalism, right? So, that's everything that we are is built on that. So they're selling you that idea. Same kind of concept, everybody understands that, when you see people on Instagram, their life's so great, it's not true. That's the thing they're showing you.
Might have great moments.
Right, it might have great moments, and more likely the more stuff you see from them, the less it's true. Right? And maybe they're trying to make it true. That could be a thing where it's a mental output that they're trying to manifest, feeling better about their lives. But in general, it's just what they're trying to show you, to market to you something that isn't necessarily real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think our goal with this podcast is to share good quality information.
Yeah.
What do you actually need to know to get the results you want? What does it actually mean to be healthy? And, we would love any suggestions if there's particular topics you want to learn about, but mostly our goal is to kind of cut through a lot of the bullshit out there and talk about how do you feel good, how do you be healthy, how do you get whatever results you might want to have in the gym without necessarily having that be your life.
Right.
And, how do you do that in a way that's sustainable and feels good and doesn't wreck you but helps you to improve your energy and feel better and have less joint pain and all of that good stuff and do all the things you want in your life. And sometimes that means you still have pain but you can do more. And that's a win too.
Right.
And then is there anything else you want to say about that?
Not really. I mean, I think that's a great point, is that, we're always convincing people, especially new clients, that we don't want them to work out a ton. One, they don't have a life of training already, but really, it's not that many people who want to make that their life. I mean, that's the reality, and most gyms out there survive, like your box gyms, on people who pay and don't go. There's, if you were there every day, you see everybody knows each other's name because it's the same, less than 10% of the populace that are paying the membership that show up all the time, right? Because it's just not that many people, and even what it takes, and you see that in the fitness world, like your trainer breaks, like Poliquin used to say, if your client's not willing to work out at least 4 days a week, you should fire them. But it's like your life is now training, and that's minimum. Right? And, we get in arguments all the time about that's just not real people. And I mean, when you see Olympians and stuff like that, sure, that's their whole life. They get paid to work out. Like that's their whole thing. Mm-hmm. Right? And you're talking about, making, 1% to 2% changes for them, and that changes, whether they're 17th place or the podium. Like, you're working with a very specific group of people. But the average person, like the real general population, is not, they're barely like rehab ready. They're not ready to work out 4+ days a week, not like workout.
No.
Like maybe they can have activity, and we give everybody homework and try to get them to do a little bit of something. And I mean bare minimum. Like if I can get people to do, some side planks and some bird dogs every day, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Like that's good, and it's going to make it's going to make a big improvement in their life.
Low-key.
Right, and people that do it,
workout
right, and then people who do it, they say things like Amy was saying, doing the McGills every day, I could really feel the difference.
Yeah.
It's like,
or even just doing some regular stretches for somebody
who's immobile,
got a lot of mobility challenges. Just doing that 3 times a week makes a big difference after just a few weeks.
It's huge.
So consistency is important, but that doesn't mean it has to be working hard every day.
Right.
No pain, no gain is bullshit.
Right. Now, if you want to drive your 1 rep maxes up higher, and you want to see all the veins and the muscle tissues that you can see, and then you're starting to do it. But and
you gotta build up to that, though.
And somebody who gets into, fitness and training or some sort of sport or something, I recommend at least being like diligent for some time. You did it and got really lean and and didn't like it. And I go, I lost pieces of me I don't want to lose, and it sucks to be like not be able to eat anything. Right, and you're just not happy, it's like you you don't have to do that, but knowing that if you're gonna is useful. And we've had several clients who like had periods where it's like, oh, they were doing everything, and they get really lean and strong, but then there's a drop off because it's not the life they want to live.
It's not sustainable.
Right.
You can't live in that place.
You can't live that way, and that's a reality.
Once you're there, you can maintain more easily than getting there. And I mean, I like working out 4 times a week for myself if I can make the time. Which even working in a gym, that's been hard to come by these days.
It's harder.
We're busy running a business, but you know, I've been lifting weights for 28 years now.
Well, that's it. That's the other thing too.
You know,
you see people, they want to get like stronger and stronger and stronger. And you know, when you're new, you get strong fast relative to where you started. But it just starts to really drop. And people they have a hard time with that, which I find interesting. That they would just expect that, oh, I can just keep throwing 10 more pounds on it. You can't do that. Otherwise, everybody would be able to lift thousands of pounds. Like, it's just, it doesn't work that way. Like, you can't do that. I mean, I've been lifting weights for almost 40 years. And I've been training longer than that. Because I was doing calisthenics. I grew up with weird military training. It's dark. But you know, it takes a long time. And I mean, I remember when I was putting 10 pounds on a barbell for a bench press type of thing, and it's like now it's putting 45s on the end is just like, oh, that's just breaking off the rust. It's not heavy. It's just doing the movement. Right, but people don't recognize the time that it takes to move to that. And some people, they get strong fast, especially if you start young, you can get strong fast.
Well, and it's good motivation when you're new to see those jumps.
With different bodies, we say in the athletic world, the sport picks the athlete, not the other way around, right? So there's different body types. Some people are born to be just like strong. Like I just look at weight and get stronger. And other people, man, they love to run. People are like, oh yeah, I want to go run for 20 miles. Like, I want to do that. That's insane. Right.
Genetically predisposed to build muscle.
Right.
It's fairly easy.
Right. It's just different bodies, different things. Right. Like I make a great, acrobatic base for picking up people and throwing them and catching them. That's not everybody. Some people are better flyers. Some people just can't do any of it at all, right? It's just that's just the way it is. You got to accept that,
Be where you're at.
Yeah, and I know there's a big drive, and especially with like CrossFit does this whole do everything and try to be good at everything, and they've made impressive strides. So since they started, especially if you look at the outliers in the games. They all get injured pretty severely though, which is I think a downside and something really overlooked. And none of them really hit like a potential in any one category that they probably could. But even though there's some real beasts, and like I said, there's always outliers. But the average people that go, they're just crushed and they're injured. Right? You can't really do that.
It's been great for promoting more lifting, more strength training.
And I love all the better equipment that comes out of it, because we got way better equipment. It's more available, and more people are like not afraid of a barbell now, just because they see it and think, oh, that's fine, which is great. Yeah, especially women. When I first started training people, pretty much there was 2 kinds of women or female presenting people that I ever saw, no matter how old they were. They all wanted Sarah Connor arms, because I'm old, so it was Terminator 2, from Terminator 2 specific, right? Or they were afraid to lift more than 5 pounds, because women should lift more than 5 pounds. And I had to trick them into not know, end up down the road and like not even tell them how much they were lifting, and kind of trick them, and eventually like, you've been doing 30 pounds. You didn't even realize.
Well, because you don't want to get bulky. And
Yeah.
what I realize is that
You know how hard it is to
it's
bulk
a
up?
lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of food.
It's typically harder to put on
build
weight
up
on
muscle.
purpose than it is to lose weight. Like losing body fat is not complicated, not hard as far as what you have to do. It's grueling. It's like you're just basically starving yourself.
It's the convincing yourself to
Right.
be fully 100% on board with
Right.
all those things. That's the hard part.
Right.
The doing it itself.
Living in a deficit, and I mean depending on how big a deficit, right? Like so a little bit's okay, and you know it's easy when you're kind of heavy and you just start losing some weight. But as you start to like want to see things, like oh, okay, you know that becomes hard. But to add muscle at like actual size and hypertrophy is not easy. I mean, it's why most people cheat and take steroids.
Right.
It's easier, and you end up recovery. I mean, that's the big thing, your ability to do it again, because you have to work so hard, and then you have to eat so much just to have the building blocks. And then the hormones,
Protein is
right, the growth hormone helps a lot of like, oh, let's use material. Right.
Yeah, but even now, you still hear people saying, oh, I just want to get toned. And
That doesn't mean anything.
what does toned mean? Toned means that you built enough muscle that you have a nicer shape and you lost enough fat that it's more visible.
Right. Right.
When muscle gets bigger. It doesn't just tone.
Well, and most people don't realize that strength and size have an inverse relationship. So your bigger like bodybuilders who train for hypertrophy to make a muscle bigger are typically, not always, but typically weaker pound for pound relative strength to size than say, a power athlete who's like a sprinter, for instance, who does 100% effort all the time for their sport, right? They can put out a lot of power, and you can see someone like our client Harlow's, at 105 pounds, which was 14, could deadlift 3 times her body weight for reps. I mean, and no limit there. I physically just didn't even see the max because I didn't like the breakdown in form. I didn't think it was worth it for her age and where she was at to be like, well, let's break form and just continue to max out.
Right.
You
don't look at her and think that she's
she's tiny and fit, but it doesn't work that way. It's about potentiation and like getting motor units to fire. Muscle spindles. People don't recognize that. You take a gymnast who's never lifted, and they can probably bench 2 times their body weight first time. Right? Now their body weight's not crazy heavy. Right? They might be 114 pounds, right? But they're still putting up 225.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of weight, right? Where most people can't do that at all.
No.
Right? And but everything they do is explosive and maximum effort, and their ability to potentiate force is much higher, right? And it's all nervous system work, and people don't recognize that hypertrophy work is really making the tissue, not the muscle spindle itself, bigger. It's more the tissue that it's in gets bigger, and there's just like more of it, which it gives you strength from having bigger levers, but it's not the same as being able to recruit more of the fibers that you have faster.
Hypertrophy is not a word that's familiar to
most
people.
That's what we call growing a muscle, basically. The act of usually creating micro damage that then when you repair it's bigger. You can do it also by not being just under that threshold. It takes a little longer. There's arguments on which is preferred, depends on who you talk to. People who work with more injuries would say it's better to stay under the threshold. People who just, don't care as much about that, go the other way. But, a lot of it depends on who you're talking about and what are the, trade-offs for them, right? Most people don't need to maximum effort or to like lift 1 rep maxes of anything ever. Not that they should just only avoid that necessarily, but I mean, there's a period of training to get to someplace like that. But it's not necessary. You don't need to always be boosting
It
out.
doesn't contribute anything to your health.
No, not necessarily. No, it can be dangerous, right?
And
Yeah.
If it makes you feel good, then sure.
But it could be dangerous from a joint health perspective. So you have to weigh it out. So like I don't throw that at people willy nilly, right? It's where are you in that spectrum? Is it worth it? I mean, if they're even like they're an athlete or they're someone who wants to be strong, you know, and try to recognize big gains like that, then it's conversations. And where do we want to go? And then, you know, what's the cutoff for that? You know, because there's a big, I mean, maybe you have a desire to go for the gold, win something, compete.
Mm-hmm.
In a competition, you might push yourself beyond any kind of limit. But would you train that way all the time? No. And any like good like power lifter even, they probably PR once or twice a year. Not every time they go to a gym. And people don't know that. It's like a long, I mean, they usually have long careers. You know, they like sort of lifting in middle school and, you know, you're seeing them, they're 30 years old and, you know, late 20s or something. And yeah, okay, you're seeing these great people, but you don't recognize the years of training and just training their joints to be able to handle those types of those loads, right?
Yeah. So all that is to say that the workout that you are afraid is going to make you bulky is probably what you need to go do to get toned.
Well, right. Absolutely. But I like to err on the side of try to have sufficient mobility, sufficient strength, be able to do what you want. And then after you're like, oh, okay, I'm healthy, I can do things, then we can start having this conversation around, do you want to train for some more specific greater adaptation? Or do you have needs around that? Because even people who like want to do something aren't necessarily there yet.
Right.
You know, like I said early on, you know, I've trained athletes, and usually they've skipped a lot of basic stuff because that's the big push. And earlier and earlier, kids are thrown into sport-specific training and skipping all the basic stuff and just general conditioning and, you know, good body mechanics and just good general athletic preparedness. And they don't have that base. And most of their injuries are because of that, right? And they either improve that and strengthen that and improve their function, and their performance will go up by that. You don't have to do all the cool elite level techniques that, you know, Olympians are doing. It's like that stuff's cool, but you gotta
work up to that.
You gotta work up to that. You can't just start there and be like, oh, this is what the greats do, so that's what I'm gonna do. You got to be on the where you're at in the continuum and go forward from there. You can't just, oh, I'm going to skip all this. Mm-hmm. That's how you end up broken and with problems that you have to go back and fix, or maybe put you out of the game entirely. So.
Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. That was kind of a little bit of a meandering conversation, but our goal in future episodes is to be a little bit more focused. This was just kind of a little introduction to us and what we're about. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know what you want, provided anybody even sees this. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to definitely try to give good information to people who don't know where to go, don't know what to do, and are, you know, a little turned off by like, oh, I want to get healthy, I got to do all this extreme shit. Because you don't. Mm-hmm. It's pretty basic stuff is where people should be starting.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to try to simplify it.
Yeah. Exactly. Simplify it. Make it easy.
Talk
make
about
it
the
attainable.
Basics, and you start there.
That's right. That's right.
All right.